So why can African people not use their wild resources? Why can't they trade in ivory? Why can they not hunt elephants and lion? Why can they not trade in rhino horn internationally? These are resources that belong to them. They own them and they have them in abundance.
We are currently working and mobilizing different African countries so that we can unite and take these animal rights to the international courts.
There's a wise African proverb that says, "Do not die of thirst while standing in water." Yet, despite their bountiful natural resources, rural African communities remain impoverished. A sustainable income blocked by Western animal rights activists who use emotionally charged anti-wildlife trade propaganda to drive their multi-million-dollar fraudulent fundraising model. Frustrated by the injustice and harm being caused by the Western animal rights activists, the natural resource-rich Makuya hunting community in southern Africa's Limpopo province has appealed to other communities in the region to join hands and take the fight against the animal rights activists to the International Court of Justice.
I am Esther Netshivhongweni. We are at Makuya Nature Reserve. Our community depends mainly in hunting. At Makuya Nature Reserve is known for big hunting trophies to our client countries. The communities who contributed the land into Makuya Park actually are benefiting a lot of money. When we are hunting, they get a lot of cash, but they are not allowed to use it like that. Their traditional council always require business plans for them to use those monies. So they have built community halls with the money. The Makuya Traditional Council has employed a number of people in their admin offices who are being paid from the hunting income. They have a number of traditional council cars who are being maintained, serviced, who are being fueled from the hunting income.
One of the organizations championing the movement to ban the import of wildlife trophies is Born Free. These hypocrites so-called rescue compromised animals. In reality, Born Free raises huge donations to relocate compromised animals by moving them from cages on one continent to simply place them back in a cage on another continent. The relocated animals cannot be reintroduced to the wild. They serve no conservation value to the species or biodiversity. The only beneficiary, the captor's bank balance. They fully commercially exploit the captive animals to the nth degree, even coercing them into producing animal poor artwork, which of course is on-sold to donors. Johannesburg-based author and environmental journalist Emmanuel Koro believes rural communities' human rights are being violated by the animal rights activists.
It's called ecocolonialism, when an outsider, especially a superpower or a former colonial master, continues to control how wild resources are managed, traded at the international level. For sovereign nations, they are the same people who preach human rights protection, but they talk of animal rights which they put above human rights. So that eco-colonialism, this paradigm which they continue to say Africa has to be told what to do.
And today we're being told we're free. Actually, we're not free. There's no freedom in our countries because of what I call eco-colonialism, meaning environment, meaning economical colonialism, where Europeans are still in our African countries wanting to control the environment to benefit them, even though that environment is in Africa.
Zach Goldsmith is a leading figure in a UK campaign to ban the import of hunting trophies. Aside from his myth information about trophy hunting having no contribution to conservation, it's difficult to understand how he was appointed as Minister of the Environment after losing his Member of Parliament seat for the second time in 3 years, along with his highly questionable racist campaign while running for the Mayor of London. Perhaps his appointment and his championing the ban on trophy imports has something to do with his friendship with animal rightist Carrie Simmons, now Mrs. Carrie Johnson.
They are fed up, as the British government is doing, to consider a bill to ban trophy hunting imports into the United Kingdom. So they've started this mother of all battles for ivory trade to take the fight to the International Court of Justice, to take the fight to CITES, to take the fight to the United Nations General Assembly, even to the African Union. And they say if they fail, then they will come back home in Africa and turn the national parks and game reserves into crop production fields. It is not surprising that things are going that way. As long as Africans don't benefit from wildlife, they're going to be forced to start exploring ways on how best they can survive.
Eduardo Concalves brought out 3 books in support of his campaign to ban trophy hunting. Jens Ulrik Hoch from the Nordic Safari Club provides an insight.
Out of the 3 books, I took a really good look at this one because it was the most coherent of the 3. And in this book alone, this book is about 260 something pages. In this book alone I found almost 70 questionable facts that I fact-checked and found to be wrong. There's as many in the other books, and I must say about this book that I only took a really hard look on about 2/3 of the book, because the other third are ad hominem attacks at people. It's chapters about lion breeding and lion rescue facilities and what have you, which has absolutely nothing to do with hunting tourism and nature conservation. So it's a lot of factual errors. No, it's basically it's wrong to call them errors because it's always to his advantage. So they're put in there on purpose. And when you make an error again and again on purpose and it happens to be to your advantage, it's not an error anymore. It's a lie. Now these are actually fake news, if anything is, and it's not a very sound foundation for decision making in any way, and it's worrying that the press will not allow the practical nature conservationists in Africa and everywhere else in the world, and the scientists and the local communities down there, and even us, the hunters, to explain our side of the story. It's extremely one-sided, and they pick the fake news information to go forward with.
I have decided in 2019 to start an organization called African Community Conservationists, looking at all the African communities who are running around in poverty, which is being caused by the animal rights. I realized that it's time for us to have some kind of an organization that will unite us to fight and to protect our environment.
If you look at the World Environment Day theme for 2021, it's talking about ecosystem restoration. How do you restore an ecosystem when people are not benefiting from that which you want to conserve? So there's no incentive to conserve wildlife when rural people just coexist with wildlife that comes to damage their crops, that comes to kill and injure their loved ones. These people are living in fear. It's like a cat and mouse game. And yet they love wildlife so much, but we've got too much of it, which is actually overstripping the carrying capacity of the ecosystem. Hunting fees from an elephant can actually build a school and pay teachers who produce graduates who actually work for socio-economic upliftment of a country.
So we are finding it very difficult that the so-called animal rights sitting in these big cities in Europe have a nerve to talk about the animals that do not even belong to them. And they are trying by all means to undermine African human rights over animal rights. Because for them, we better, as rural communities, all of us can die as long as these animals can survive. And in South Africa West, it's even in our constitution, it's even legalized through various pieces of legislation. We are allowed to hunt as long as it's sustainable and is going to be benefiting current and future generations. There's nothing wrong with that. But we wonder, who are these people who wants to undermine our constitution, who wants to undermine African legislation in terms of hunting, who continue to say stop hunting. These are the people who survive from emotions. They like the world to believe in their emotional talks, and on the other hand, they're making a lot of money through these talks, undermining our human rights, African human rights. The European Union, the United Nations, they must be there as the international watchdogs, not to undermine African constitutions, not to undermine African legislation. Release the strict measures that are being given to our governments so that we as African communities, we are able to freely utilize what belongs to us, being our environment and our natural resources, within the ambit of our laws.